Over the past few years, I have spoken quite a bit about XCOM 3, about the development, if we will see XCOM 3, and about the much talked about GeForce Now leaked, which had XCOM 3 on the list. But as we are heading in the middle of 2024, it is crazy to think that it's almost been 10 years since the release of XCOM 2, so the question still remains, is XCOM 3 in development and will we actually see it being released? Red here, and I hope you're doing well and having a fantastic day, and the short answer to that is yes, I do think that XCOM 3 is being developed as we speak, and I do think that we will see the release of XCOM 3. The big question, of course, is when it'll be released, because recently Firaxis announced Civilization 7 for a 2025 release. And 2026 will mark the 10-year anniversary of XCOM 2, which does kind of make a more ideal release date for the third title in the XCOM franchise. You know, the whole on the 10-year anniversary of XCOM 2 kind of marketing idea. And also, if Civilization 7 is released in 2025, then the team can shift fully focusing on developing XCOM 3. But of course, many, including myself, wants to know, why was XCOM 3 not released yet? What happened to it? And was that GeForce Now leak actually true? Well, in a recent interview by Danny O'Dwyer from No Club, he had an interview with Jake Solomon, who previously worked at Firaxis and was essentially the lead on XCOM Enemy Unknown as well as XCOM 2 before working on Marvel's Midnight Suns, whereafter he departed from Firaxis, starting his own studio. And I will leave a link to that interview in the description below. But in that interview, they actually speak about XCOM 3, and in short, it is what we all thought. The reason that XCOM 3 has not been released yet was because of Marvel's Midnight Suns. XCOM 3 was actually being developed by Jake Solomon, but production was essentially halted due to the opportunity for them to work on a Marvel game, that being Marvel's Midnight Suns. As to how far XCOM 3 was in development or how far they were with the game, that is still unknown, because we know, like I said, due to the GeForce Now leak, there was XCOM 3 on the list, and as we know by now, most of those titles on the leaked list was accurate, so that gives me the indication that they were possibly testing a playable version of XCOM 3, likely in like pre-alpha stage, but that is of course just speculation and there's no actual proof of that aside from XCOM 3 being on that GeForce Now list. But Jake Solomon in the interview, like I said with Danny O'Dwyer, did say that he was working on XCOM 3 and his idea for XCOM 3 was not underwater, despite the Terror from the Deep like ending that was teased at the end of XCOM 2, but he does say that XCOM 3 was not going to be set underwater. And while working and planning on XCOM 3, Marvel came to Firaxis, wanted them to work on a Marvel game, and of course it was Jake Solomon's dream to always work on a Marvel game, and they decided to go with Midnight Suns. And ultimately, as we all know, we got the turn-based deck building game Marvel's Midnight Suns. Now I have played quite a bit of Marvel's Midnight Suns, and it is an enjoyable game, but let's face it, it is no XCOM at all. And it is interesting in the interview listening to Jake Solomon talk about the major success of the XCOM rebooted franchise and then wanting to do a Marvel game, which if you think about it, he should have completed XCOM 3 then make Marvel's Midnight Suns. I also do think that the reason Marvel's Midnight Suns did not do fantastic numbers is because when it was released in 2022, many people were kind of exhausted by the superhero genre, and it was around that time, even before it, when at least the whole MCU and the cinematic world of the superheroes took a bit of a nosedive, and many people just tuned out of what was happening with superhero stuff, including games, except of course Sony's Spider-Man game, which did sell a lot of copies, but that is purely one character and not based on a team of superheroes. Of course, as we all know, at the end Jake Solomon did leave Firaxis after the release of Marvel's Midnight Suns, which goes back to the beginning of this video. What is the state of XCOM 3 and will we ever see it being released? Now, like I said, Firaxis wasn't too happy with the reception of Marvel's Midnight Suns, so I doubt we will ever see some sort of sequel on that game, because they've already finished all the DLC and updates, and I believe it's been quite a while since the last update for that game. And as they are actively working on Civilization 7, which, like I said, is being released in 2025, I do think that after that, their next major title will be XCOM 3. I don't see them doing a new IP at this point. We know that XCOM is a very successful franchise, and XCOM 2 is still very active thanks to the modding community, as mods are still being released on a weekly and daily basis on the Steam Workshop as well as other modding websites. And there is no doubt that XCOM 3 will probably have mod support, as they would be silly not to include that. And you have to remember that XCOM 2 was built on Unreal Engine 3, so can you imagine what an XCOM game would look like with Unreal Engine 5? As to when we will see an announcement for XCOM 3, well, I can see a possibility of it being teased at the Game Awards at the end of this year, if not maybe the Summer Games Fest 2025, because I'm sure that Firaxis don't want to release or at least announce XCOM 3 while they're still working on Civilization 7, because it would take away some of the spotlight of Civilization 7. So I can even see it being a case of the Game Awards in 2025, after the release of Civilization 7, they announce XCOM 3 with a release of 2026. But of course, this is all just speculation, but I do honestly think that XCOM 3 is being developed at this moment, and I hope we get some sort of news sooner rather than later. But what do you think? Do you think that XCOM 3 is being developed? Let me know in the comments below, and for more gaming content, have a look at the rest of my channel. If you like this video, then give me a thumbs up. If you dislike it, then give me a thumbs down, but please tell me why so I can improve my videos. My name is Frank, I'm the Red Tie Guy, and frankly, thank you for watching. Catch you guys in the next video.